All right, the next one that we're going to do is this Bumblebee card here, where they rock back and forth and actually spin. So the very first step that we're going to do is we're going to stamp and emboss our sentiment so that it's ready at the end. So I am using a Versamark stamp pad, which is a watermark ink, but it's a sticky ink. So when we go to put our embossing powder on it, it is going to stick perfectly until it is heated with a embossing gun. I'm going to put my powder on there. I'm working on a scrap piece of paper so that anything that comes off of this can go right back into the container. I got a little bit of ink on the edge of my stamp that went on the paper, so the powder is sticking to it. Anything you don't want melted onto that paper, you want to make sure to take off, because if it's on that paper when you use it or hit it with the heat gun, it is going to melt there. So I'm using an embossing gun. It's not the same as the heat it tool that I used to dry the ink. You could emboss with this tool, but it's a lot more gentle, so it takes a lot longer to emboss. This, the heat is concentrated and it embosses a lot quicker, although it's cold right now, so it'll take a bit to warm up. There we are. And that is going to take a few seconds just to cool down. I just want to make sure to wait until that heat has cooled down before I cut it, and it is already cooled. It only takes a few seconds, but you don't want to take it right from the heat gun into your trimmer, because otherwise you'll start to smear the embossing because it'll still be warm. There we go. Now it is trimmed down. I am going to cut it in half, but I'll do that later when I'm going to go and mount it. Next step is I'm going to do that same background as I did for the last one. The idea is kind of, we've got a field of flowers, but it's very, very out of focus. So I'm going to do these three colors on the top and this color on the bottom. Let's start with the lightest of the colors, my yellow. And I'm just kind of doing them in circular motions, kind of as if it was flowers that are out of focus. Good idea to put your lids right by your pad so you remember what color is which. And once again, I'm going to ink, and then I'm going to go back to it and I'm going to ink it again, just to really blend those inks together. Now the red one. Now this, my red ink pad here is not very wet. It actually needs to be re-inked, but I decided not to do it before doing these samples because I didn't want that color to overpower everything else. I wanted it to be fairly subtle. Go back to the yellow again. Just get those colors blended. And then orange. And then the red. And obviously you can change whatever background colors you want. I was trying to keep all the colors the same between the cards, simply so that there's some continuity between them. And that they look fairly similar. But if you wanted your cards to be all different colors, absolutely you could do that. It's also fall here when I'm filming this, so I kind of thought fall colors was just kind of feels perfect right now. But once again, this will work for any season, any dye, whatnot, any color. All right, put that to the side. I've already got my pieces die cut for my bumblebees. I chose to do bumblebees for this. This is from this particular die set. So I'm doing the bumblebees. You could also do the ladybugs for this set. You just want to make sure the bodies are big enough to cover the openings for the mechanism that we use in this card. And you'll understand in the next part when we start to do that, what I mean by that. If you can see the background of the card, it kind of takes the magic out of it. So I'm going to move this to the side. I do want to take these pieces and I want to spray them with some mica spray just to give them some shimmer before moving on and completing the card. So I'm going to spray them and then I'm going to let them dry completely before I assemble the butterflies. So once again, make sure that you've got all the mica off of the bottom, and best to do it by shaking it like this, not like this. If you shake it like this, sometimes you get mica into the sprayer and then you have to use water to unclog it and you end up wasting some spray there. So I spray it quite liberally and then let it dry. What you could do if you wanted to not waste that spray is move these carefully with like your dye pick or something, and then use some paper to pick up that spray. But I'm just gonna let it dry and then I'm gonna clean off my desk before the next part. I'll see you when it's dry. All right, our bodies and wings are all dry. So the first step, I'm going to glue on the little bodies. It's super easy to just layer them. They all the little bits and pieces match together for this. And remember when I was talking about cleaning off my desk, I clearly didn't clean it off between cards because I've got a little bit of the mahogany color bleeding on there from when the spray hydrated it on the mat, but that's okay. That's all I'm going to coordinate. And then these little wings flip up a little bit. So I'm going to glue them all together and then I'm going to let them dry completely before we assemble the card, because I don't want these bits to be wet in any way. But since we have to wait for this to dry, what I am going to do is on my finished card, I added a little bit of stickles, both to the end of the antenna and the bodies. So I'm going to put them on these guys so that that can dry at the same time as the glue. So just a touch around the body and just a dot on each of the antenna. There we go. This particular die cut, this takes a little while to dry, and while it is drying, this little bit gets a little bit weak because the paper is damp and it's quite thin. So I want to make sure that it is 100% dry before we continue on with the rest of the card. So those stickles are going to take a little bit to dry, but I'm waiting for the glue anyways. So that is perfect. I will see you when those are dry and we'll start assembly.